Imagine just for 1 second that you suddenly find yourself in a massive luxurious home, cat-sitting for somebody, when 3 home invaders suddenly show up in the house looking to settle their next score. What do you do? Now, same scenario. What do you do if you're also blind? That's essentially the concept behind the first 2022 film that I saw this year, See For Me. The main question that I had in my mind was, how does this film measure up to other similar sensory thrillers like it? Let's get cracking. When blind Sophie cat sits in a secluded mansion, 3 thieves break in to steal money from a hidden safe. Sophie's only defense is Army veteran Kelly, who she meets on the See For Me mobile app. Kelly attempts to help Sophie defend herself against the invaders and survive. Holistically, upon hearing the plot synopsis for See For Me, you might be asking yourself, again? In the last decade or so, thrillers have been popping up left and right, featuring a main character that, for whatever reason, is unable to use one of their senses. Oftentimes, that sense in question is, like in See For Me, sight. Most of these thrillers you'll probably recognize. Films like Hush or Bird Box feature characters that are unable to see anything. Then there's films like A Quiet Place or Don't Breathe, where the characters are unable to speak. Heck, Hush and Don't Breathe specifically are both home invasion films, where the person at home has to defend themselves while being blind. So at this point, this type of movie is beginning to water itself a little bit thin. And if you're like me, you might be asking yourself, what's so special about this one? Why watch it over the others? I don't know if I have an answer for you. The one and only aspect about this film that feels like its own identity is an app that the main character has. It's called See For Me. This app essentially video chats with somebody who can use the camera on your phone to help you do things if you're blind. There's an aspect to that concept that I do like, as we're all familiar with trust challenges, one of them being get blindfolded and based entirely off of somebody else's direction, complete an activity. This is basically a feature-length version of that. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if there's enough material for a whole movie to work off of that idea. So some of this film does feel a little bit filler, or at the very least, familiar with things that we've already seen thus far. That being said, the thriller aspect alone was actually decent. I was on the edge of my seat, desperate to discover what would come next. But, and there's a big, giant, bodacious but, See For Me has a character development problem. It's a problem that I can't really talk about that much because it's pretty substantial in terms of plot direction, which means, spoilers. But it's also kind of a messy approach, in general, that has our lead character flip-flopping their entire personality. We're not just talking about a gradual shift, where a character changes throughout the runtime of the film. That is normal. Instead, you're looking at a massive, almost bipolar shift in the essence of their character's being, going back and forth a few times. To me, that shows a writer who isn't sure how they want the story to end, and so they flip-flop the character just to keep all options on the table. Unfortunately, along with the main character's personality and drive, my experience with the movie also kind of flip-flopped because of that. Taking a look at this movie from a strictly technical or unbiased vantage point, a majority of this film feels remarkably safe. The way in which it's made, it doesn't particularly challenge itself in terms of cinematography, editing, performances, none of that. The only thing that it does seem to do is have a slightly higher focus on things like sound effects, since our main character's blind and has to go off of little sounds that they pick up on. It's not a massively amazing focus that I notice all the time, but here and there it was clear enough for me to pick up on, and I did like that. Otherwise, everything else in this department was, business as usual. This score is 68%. As for how I personally felt about the movie, or my bias score, I can't say that I loved it all around, but it's a good enough time, and I found it to be mostly engaging enough to not bore me. So that's good. In terms of lining it up with other thriller films featuring a lack of the senses, this is a movie that just doesn't really measure up to those other giants out there. But if those movies didn't exist, then maybe See For Me would have held a better chance. Overall, a decent watch at 74%, for my bias score at least. When we combine those two scores together, we come to the final rating for See For Me. 71%. 71 out of 100 possible stars. So, it's not bad for a first film of the year experience, which can sometimes be questionable in January. However, it is far, far from a must-see. So technically speaking, it's the best movie of the year so far. But I haven't seen anything else, so that's bound to change. And coincidentally, that also means it's the worst movie of the year at the same time, so take that as you will. And guys, let me know what you thought about See For Me in the comment section down below if you've seen it. If you have not, are you planning to see it soon? And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the number